This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by my co-host, Casey Trujillo, and most importantly, I'm joined by an amazing guest, Rachel Provan, who is an amazing CS leader. We've been following her for a while, and we're super pumped to have her on the show. So, Rachel, welcome to SaaS Therapy.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I've been in CS leadership for like 17 years, and got my own business, and now I actually teach other CS leaders how to build and scale CS departments. So I'm on the other side of the desk now, but I have seen it all at this point.
Well, Rachel, what I'm so excited about for today's conversation is I actually attended a webinar. I believe it was Client Success asked you to come join. And I'll set this up with a funny story. My father-in-law and his daughter, they were having an argument. They're both on separate political sides, like extreme as you can get extreme. And one person left, I won't say which side. One person left was saying, it's science. And they were bawling and they left. What I like about Rachel, what we're going to discuss today is you're actually going to give us some science. You're actually going to help us understand a little bit more about what you covered there at the Client Success webinar, which I thought was so fantastic. How do we use a little science to our advantage as we're going through this? So I am stoked. Why don't you just maybe preview just a little bit about what you covered at Client Success and what we're going to cover today. And then, of course, obviously, Todd and I are very curious people, and we'll be asking questions along the way. But, give us a little background of what you covered there and why it's so impactful in this topic that you cover.
Sure. What I really covered there was how to use behavioral psychology to impact customer success, both in proving your value internally and getting your customers to do things like adopt and renew, those nice things.
Those nice ones.
Maybe even get a little upsell. The main issue is we tend to think of people as logical, or we assume people are logical and they're going to act logically, and they're not, us included. That's just not how the human brain works. We make decisions based on emotion and justify it with logic. This has kept us alive for a very long time, but it doesn't make us great at business. So what I like to do is, I'm a huge psych nerd. So I've managed to combine my two passions of psychology and customer success. I actually have a podcast called Psychology of Customer Success, so that I was able to just fully nerd out on this, and it turned out other people do too.
So awesome.
But really, I talked about how we tend to think of that the human is going to act like a computer. Right?
Yeah.
Like with a computer, it's ones and zeros. It's yes and no. It's logic. It's the same every time. It doesn't have any hidden motivations that we know of so far, thank God. And, you're always going to get consistent results. And humans are the exact opposite. We're not basing things on the number. We're basing things on what I believe you're going to do or what my experience has been. Like, I do a little experiment where I say, all right, what if I give you, I'll give you $50 today, or in 6 weeks, I'll give you $200. Which do you want? And most people choose, give me my money right now, right? The problem is a computer is always going to choose the $200. Why? Because it's more money. It doesn't worry about your nefarious plans to ghost me and, not give me any money. So the facts of it, we all decide that technically illogically. But it is based on our perceptions, based on what we have experienced before. So that is not logic. That is, our brain builds something called schemas, which are our ways of looking at the world. And over time, they become so solidified that our brain just thinks them automatically. And this is good because we have, I think, something like 11 million, billion, something like that, bits of information coming at us at any given second, and we can process 30 to 40 of them. 30 to 40 total. So we have to be aware of things without having to think of them. Like if you had to think of everything that you were looking at right now, like, oh, there's a lamp, there's a bed, there's a light, there's a fan, it just to register it every time, you would never get anything done. So you make all these shortcuts to make life livable. It's a good system. But with this system, the brain tends to, it's taking shortcuts. And what happens when you take shortcuts? Mistakes.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen when you take shortcuts. And heuristics and cognitive biases. Lots of big words here, but basically, it's the predictable mistakes that happen because your brain sets up these frames of how it views the world.
Oh my gosh.
Now,
Rachel, this is going to
what?
be so good. Like, I mean, Todd, I told you this is going to be good. And this SaaS therapy session is going to be for me because, Rachel, I just lost a deal. And I know I lost it because not that my product didn't answer their solution, is I thought logically and they were
Mm-hmm,
emotional. And
mm-hmm.
at some point, Todd's going to ask you a question here coming up. But at some point, I'm going to sit down on the virtual couch and I'm going to have you walk me through where I missed, because this episode's all for me. I'm sorry to our audience that loves listening. I'm going to get some personal one-on-one here.
It's true.
Perfect. I
And
think that's the best way, is to see it applied to real situations. I can talk all day, but seeing it applied to, like, okay, here's an actual situation, what's going on, what would be some ways to go about it?
yeah, and that. So I love the ideas that you're talking about here, and the way our brains work neurologically from a scientific perspective. Heuristics is a fascinating topic. The joke one that comes to my mind. There's a great British television show called The IT Crew, that where every single time the IT person answers the phone, they don't even wait to listen to the person. They just said, "Did you try turning it on and off again?"
I was just going to
Right.
say,
And
yeah,
so that's an example of a heuristic that I think is really great. Is
yeah.
like IT people, like, okay, what's my shortcut? I'm going to have you restart your computer and see if that
Mm-hmm.
fixes it. And so a lot of times that can be, you're right, it can be helpful for us because we have too many inputs to process, but it can also cause blind spots. And so I'd love to hear from Casey. What do you think was your blind spot, Casey, this week that caused you to get you into trouble? You mentioned
Okay.
maybe you thought
Yes.
too
Okay.
logically, but
I'm going to give the case
dig
study
into that a
right
little bit
here.
more
Let's
for us.
go. Thank you, Todd.
We're putting you on the couch, Casey.
Thank you, because I need it, because eating McDonald's last night at like late at night and all that horrible food didn't help me at all. So, okay, here's the situation, Rachel. So I have this referral. I get a referral. So immediately a referral, I'm thinking, oh, like, this is great. Like, a referral
Yeah.
is usually, your chances of
Fish
winning
in a
are like,
barrel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
right.
Should be
I'm
super
already
easy.
there, right? Great. They tell me that they're looking at systems like the one that Brainstorm, the company we work for, produces. And I'm so, okay, great. And we get on the call, and the potential customer is just like, oh my gosh, it's like you're reading my mind, just all those wonderful things. So I'm building in my mind, it's a referral. I'm overviewing what we're doing, and I'm getting all the wonderful reinforcements.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, in that regard, I ride the emotion of like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, and I'm telling myself all the stories that have happened in the past that this is going to logically work out the way that I want to. And so I skip steps. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
say, so you're most likely looking at other solutions. Have you defined your decision making criteria yet? Do you know what that looks like? How do you prioritize that? I skipped those steps and thought,
Mm-hmm.
I immediately have this deal. And
Yeah,
so I
it's
skipped
sold,
those
right?
steps,
Yeah.
right? So I end up losing on a couple of feature sets that are actually our strongest feature sets, but I didn't cover those feature sets because I never asked what the actual decision making criteria was. Like, what was most important to you as the customer? And so, Rachel, how do I stop myself sometimes from doing that when you come into a situation that's very comfortable, that you have seen the success in the past, and so you logically think it's going to go that way? What are maybe some things I need to rewire my brain into to think through that? So help me, because Todd, what I missed is treating this as if I'm not winning the deal. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
missed, is just starting
Yeah.
from ground zero. I
Well,
started at like
and I love
where
that
I'm.
because Rachel, I don't know if this was your point initially, because I think part of it is like understanding the psychology of your customer, but do we also understand our own psychology? Because
Yeah,
Casey, I think rightly recognizes his emotions blinded him to the situation of what the customer
100%.
needed, right? So
And
I think it goes
normal.
both ways, and that's an important
Been there.
element. But yeah,
Yeah.
dive in, Rach.
Like I have absolutely done the same thing. It's like I know better. I teach this stuff. What is wrong with me? It's like, damn, it really seemed like it. We're just. But what it is that we all go into our interactions with another person, especially in business, thinking about what we want. Right? We have our things we want to get out of it, and we have our little checklist that we're going to go through. And yes, yes, yes. If it's this, it's going my way, and I'm going to get what I want. Right? And when we're so focused on that, we're just missing a lot of subtle little cues about what they want, you know? Like sometimes people just yes you to death because they're like, "Oh god, this person." Like they're not even asking me XYZ. You don't.
Okay, I need to pause you right there,
Yeah.
Rachel. Is there any help you can give me for the fake yeses, where I'm getting these yeses and they're not clicking with me? Is there
Yeah.
any tips you have there? I didn't mean to throw you
No,
off here,
absolutely not.
but
Talk less.
just right there,
Talk
help
less on a
me
call.
understand that. Yeah.
And I hate talking less. I love talking. But like I had a post-it note uh that basically just said shut up, it's not about you, on my computer for a long, long, long time, and I probably need to put it back. um but it's just worse, and it's not that we're like so full of ego. Most of the time it's that there are a bunch of different factors, but we're just not thinking from anyone else's perspective. And where am I? Oh yeah, so if they're yesing you, yes is a very short answer. It doesn't tell you anything. So if they're just agreeing with you, yep, yep, you got it, you're not asking enough, you're not listening enough. Because it's one thing to be like, I know, I bet you're having this problem and this problem and this problem. And in a way, it can be like, yes, how did you know? But it's that much more powerful if they're the ones that say, I'm having this problem and this problem and this problem, and they're naming their pain, right? Because they're going to experience it more in their mind as they're explaining it to you. If you make it easy for them by listing it yourself, they're not feeling that issue right now. You've taken that away from them and things now feel easy. Um, but a lot of it's really hard to not have a predefined way that you want the conversation to go and checklists and stuff like that. I think it's better to have a broader view. It's like, what do I need to discover? You know, so much more is about discovery than it is about selling. Like I love spin selling because all you're doing is asking questions until the person has basically sold themselves, and then you're like, oh well, we have something for that. Never having even mentioned the product, but it's like, okay, so this is your problem. You know, this is the situation. Here are all the things it's impacting. Here's how serious it is. Here's how quickly you want to act. Um, oh well, okay, well that's great because we absolutely have something to do that. You always want to make sure that you're covering benefits over features. That's like kind of a standard thing that a lot of people know, but especially in the product world, we have this feature and this feature and this feature, and it's like, congratulations on the client part. It's like, we can take away this pain point and this pain point and this pain point. You're not going to lose revenue. You're not going to lose time. We're going to decrease risk. So increase revenue, decrease risk, and improve productivity, basically. Make money, save money, security. Um, so those are, I talked in this webinar as well about framing, because framing has a lot to do with renewals and things like that. Not so much with, I mean, I'm sure it has to do with initial sales as well, but the way I explain it and the way we're able to use these things to our advantage is loss aversion, because we have all these cognitive biases, like now versus later. Like, I don't want to invest in later. I want my money now, right? With the 50 versus 200. That really works against us in customer success, because what we're really asking people is to invest in long term. But if you do loss aversion is actually the most powerful uh, cognitive bias there is, because we hate to lose what we already have. We would rather keep what we already have than get something new that is of greater value most of the time. Or rather, the joy we get from a new thing is much less than the pain, than the level of pain we get from losing something that we already had. Like, if I all of a sudden get a doctor bill for $1,000, that hurts. It's like I had plans for that money. It's not going to like wipe me out financially, but God damn it, like that's going to mess me up. It messes up my budget. Um, Whereas, if I get $1,000 commission because I made an affiliate sale, it's like, oh, cool, that's neat. I wasn't expecting that, but it's not like huge. I'm not like, oh, phew. But if I lose it, like, it really throws me off my game, and I'm mad. I'm thrown off now. So since we know that the pain of loss, we're all really afraid of whatever we've built up, our job, our family, our career. We're always constantly afraid, like, oh, this is all a fluke. I'm going to lose it at any moment, right? Any minute, someone's going to figure out I have no idea what I'm doing, and it's all going to go away, and I'm going to end up living in a box under a bridge. That is a constant fear for everyone, even though it is incredibly subtle. That's what your brain's designed to do, is think the worst case scenario to prevent you from going there. Gosh, I feel like I've rambled. The loss aversion, the way we can apply this in customer success. It's not just about, oh, but we have these new features and we have, and these are the cool things you could do with them. Is that going to be more compelling, or is it like, here's all the work you've put into it. We know you've worked so hard to get this integrated with your systems. You've taken the time, you've taken the effort. We wouldn't want you to lose access to this benefit, this benefit, this benefit. And, no, I understand it if you're thinking of taking that in-house. Do you have the people to cover that? And have you considered what they can't work on if they're now doing this? It's, what is this going to take away from me? So using words like lose access to, the effort you put in. There's also some stuff you can do with not framing, priming, where this is an interesting one. If you say something like bye bye now, people are more likely to purchase on a link they click because they've heard bye. Even though it's bye bye, they've heard bye. So if you can seed words in the conversation before you're even talking about renewal, saying things like, I'm someone who really values like long-term investments. So I've been looking at, we've been looking at colleges with my kid and teaching them about the value. And what you do then is the person's like, I'm someone who values long-term investment. That sounds like a virtue. That's me. So there are all these subtle things that you can do to cue it up, but really that gets a little complicated. Really, the easiest thing to do is make it about them, make it about them. What I tell my students in CS Leadership Academy, they learn this for their customers, their cross-functional meetings, especially, and the C-suite. Every time you have a meeting with someone, you're going to go in with your own goals in mind. And you can't tell yourself that you're just going to be able to turn that off and only focus on them. It's just not how your brain's going to work in the moment. So what you do is, before you have that conversation, you have to understand who you're talking to, right? What is this person measured on? What's going to help them get promoted? What's going to help them hit their KPIs? What's going to make them look great? And then you have to find some way to tie your product or whatever it is you want to that. And sometimes it takes a little brainstorming with ChatGPT or whatever. We had to do this without that for a long time. But writing that down on a Post-it, like, it's the what's in it for me. I was like, I am tattooing this on everyone's eyelids. Just think of the customer saying, what's in it for me? So what? Why should I care? To everything you say, until you get to, it's like, well, you gain this much more revenue. It's like, or it's some kind of number that's impressive, that's going to make them look good to their boss, right? People are not,
Yeah, I think you hit it
yeah,
right,
people are not getting rid of,
Rachel. It's saying,
people are not getting rid of a product that will help them get promoted, right? They're going to fight for that.
yeah. And I think the thing is having that, like you said, this at the beginning, is having them say it, because
Yeah.
again, the experience I'm saying of 17 years, myself 20 years, you you feel that you already know
Yeah.
what they need, and you already feel like because you've seen it, you've been there 1,000 times. I've talked to 1,000 different people in this position, and not having them say it
Mhm.
and feel it, right? There's something to when you say it out loud, when you're the one
Yeah.
being vulnerable, that it means more as you start to circle back, versus, like you said at the beginning, maybe I'm the one saying, hell, so you're probably dealing with this and this and this, right? Oh my gosh, yes. Not having them state, I'm losing something there. So I
Yeah.
really like how you said that at the
Yeah.
beginning.
I mean, I tell them to write down, with that conversation, with this, like, write down what's in it for them on the piece of paper. Like, what are, why is this going to benefit them? Why should they care? Start your conversation with that, because you're never going to remember once you're in the midst of it. You're in with the tide and it's moving. But if you start with that, that's always going to perk up people's ears, and they're always going to be that much more interested in working with you.
Yeah, Rachel, one of the things that I see a lot of CSM struggle with is knowing how to adjust and focus on the message based off of the person they're talking to. Meaning, like, let's say, as an example, the person who has to make the buying decision is the executive, but they're not in the day to day. And the person who you work with on a day to day basis may not actually understand what the executive cares about and what the needs of the executive are if they're the person who has to sign. So how do you adjust and focus on the fact that like, as an example, the person in the day-to-day might care a lot more about features because they have to use the software every day, whereas the executive doesn't. And so one element here is how do you help adjust based off of the audience you're talking to? And then a second component to that is, how do you know if you need to do that? Because some software companies are like, they're very sales led, and honestly, no matter what you do, the executive is just not going to care much about this whole thing. They're not going to get in the weeds. Whereas, like, maybe you're an advisor and you're a consultant, and the executive is going to care a lot because you're an expensive service that you're selling, not just some, like, tool that my team is using. And so I guess, so two elements there. I don't know if that's
Not
too
at
much to
all.
bite
Not
off
at all.
in one question, but I'm curious to get your
I'm
thoughts
picking
there.
up what you're putting down. In the presentation that I do on this, I actually have a prompt that, I discuss, like, you have at least three different, um, I'm forgetting the name for them, personas that you are dealing with. That's for one use case. What if your product does more than one thing, or you have, more than one type of client? I mean, then it makes more. But you have to know what each of those wants and how we get there using the product, right? So I actually have a custom reusable prompt that I designed, that you can use. Like, this is my product, these are the use cases and features, this is the customer type, it's the executive sponsor. And there's things that, like, executive sponsors care about. It's going to be, revenue, it's going to be margins, it's money, time and money. And so it's like, help me figure out the messaging for this person. I want to communicate X, help me come up with the messaging. And it has you do that for the executive sponsor, your day-to-day touch point, and the end user. Because guess what? Even if you have very little contact with the end user, if they're not using the product, not going to get a lot done. The way you get buy-in with executives is, again, what's in it for them? Why should they care? Right? So the best time to get in there is during that sales CS handoff. Just like getting their name, shooting them an email saying, hey, I know you're super busy and the last thing you probably want to do is meet with a software vendor. I'm just aware that what you want out of the software may be not the main focus of the day-to-day person who's trying to make it work and implement it. Would it be all right with you if I occasionally touched base to communicate where we were on the metrics that you care about, that you stated, of why you wanted to get this? just so you could have like a one-page progress report. I'm not going to take up a ton of your time. And then if you have any questions, I'm of course always available for you, right? And having that messaging, because you're not going to get an executive most of the time on a QBR every quarter, given that we have now, what is it? Almost 300 SaaS products per company. And we all want to get on the phone every quarter to be like, let's talk about me. Doesn't that sound great for an hour with a lot of slides? Don't you want to do that? So again, just making it about them. What do they care about? How can I communicate with you on that? You know, this is what my product does. They're not buying a product that doesn't impact revenue or efficiency, or unless it's security. But it's like, here's how it's impacting you on that. Here's what you can say to the board that you decreased spend by using this, and you had more resources available to work on these projects because of, you don't have to say it's because of this product. You can just say, I decreased spend by X. I improved productivity by X. That's what we want for you, right?
Awesome. Rachel, I'm going to take one of the things I've already learned from you is I'm going to go to loss. I'm going to hit on that versus something else. So, Rachel, what are maybe 5 words that I might be using that are causing me to lose deals or renewals? What are some words that I should take out of my vocabulary?
That's tricky because I know I can identify them in the moment, but I don't know what you're saying. It's not like they're like the 5 keywords you should never use in a renewal. And like, if there was, I'd write like a cool post on it and get lots of clicks. It's, first of all, and I don't think CS does this so much. I think that most of the company outside of CS assumes that that success is pretty much inevitable. That like, if you have the product, that's the result. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
I have a gym membership. I still can't lift more than 5 pounds. I can't carry my groceries home. That is not the fault of the gym. You got to be clear here. It is not the product. It's the humans that aren't taking the product up on its value. We can want the outcome, but at the end of the day, if it's not positioned and we're not motivated to adopt it, to spend the time, the pain in the ass time to get it integrated into our lives, that's really where you lose them. There's very little you can say in a renewal conversation, honestly, because they were won or lost months ago. It's like when someone's breaking up with you, it's like they're gone. They made that decision well before this conversation. It wasn't like, I don't like his shirt today, I'm out. It's and maybe they gave you a chance or maybe they didn't, but something happened that it was a deal breaker, or they never got it together to really prioritize this. And that's why the messaging is so important from the very beginning. That I know this is a pain, but this is what we have to do. And to keep weaving in the what's in it for me into your messaging during onboarding even. It's like, all right, instead of just like, all right, I need you to upload a list of contacts. I need you to connect these APIs. Well, no, why are they doing this? What is going to be easier for them once they do that? That's going to allow us to automate and sync all of your contacts. You're not going to have to go searching for them anymore. And it's going to save you probably at least an hour every day, like 0 searching, right? I'm more likely to fit that into my daily priorities. Because if you think about it, everyone's got, 27 emails, 3 projects from their boss, 1 million Slack messages going. And if the adoption of your product is not at the top of their list as a priority, which it's probably not, it's at the bottom. Right? So we have to make it that essential, that important to them selfishly, that they're willing to put it at the top. And we're not going to do that just being like, hey, clean your room. It's like, clean your room because then you get ice cream. So it's not just for the renewal conversation. It's all the way along. And what's so interesting is so much of this is like marketing copywriting and like marketing in general. But people expect CS to be able to do everything. We should be able to sell. We should be able to copyright. or write copy. And that is a huge, difficult skill. Like, I'm a writer, and it took me years to learn copywriting because it is entirely different. Um, that's more like subconscious messaging, and it's tricky. And a lot of CSMs are like, I just want to help people. And it's like, there's a lot more to it. But if you imagine having to create the messaging for all those different personas, for all the different touch points, it's a lot. It's doable. And that's what I teach people to do in a way that's not completely overwhelming. And it works. It works on repeat. But you have to understand that you're dealing with humans and have the right messaging for humans in order to motivate them to ever use your product in the first place. Because once they've seen the value,
So,
like once it's delivered on its promise, they've seen the value, and you're reminding them why this matters to them. The renewal isn't a conversation, it's a piece of paper. It's like, yeah, of course, send it.
yeah, for sure. Rachel, one of the things we've talked about two things I feel like a lot so far today. One is our own psychology, and the things that we can do to not manipulate. That sounds really bad.
I call
But
it positive
psychology, right?
influence.
Yeah, sure. The way we can positively influence the conversation. I think that's a much better way than say manipulate the conversation. But we talked a lot about either our own attitude or the things that we do. I'd love to dive in a little bit more and get some perspective from what are some of the things that we should be aware of and understanding what's going on in the minds of our customers themselves. Because one of the things that I struggle with, right, is like, just as here's an example, right? So let's say that we think they're logical and they're going to say, well, my tool does X, it provides this benefit, it provides this service, but we don't understand that they were just told that, like, somebody on their team was let go and they're worried about their job, and there's all these other things that are happening, and they're worried about the cost that they put on the business or whatever that might be, and they might completely ignore all the outcome messages of where we want to go because of some other unsaid underlying issue. And so how do we better understand the mindset of the customer and uncover that? Like you mentioned a couple of things I loved earlier, which is shut up and listen, which I think is great, really good advice. But is there anything else that we can do to be better at empathy and understanding the position of the buyer and the person on the other side of the phone?
100%. Ask them just, and it might not seem like I might be able to help, but sometimes understanding the bigger picture is really helpful. What are some of the, what's going on in your organization right now? What are their key priorities? If I was a fly on the wall in, the executive meeting, what do you think I'd hear? Now, putting yourself as a fly on the wall, that's a visual, and it immediately plants their mind in that room. And it gets them, that gets people talking. I stole that from Bob London, by the way. He's great at this information. But really asking them, like, what do you think it would take to get you a raise? Like, what would have to happen? Is there anything, like, what are your key priorities, even if they're nothing to do with us? Like, what are your key initiatives this quarter? And even saying, like, how's it going with I know a lot of SaaS companies are feeling the squeeze. Are you? Like, I know that I talk to a lot of people who they're having to fight for their software. So, like, I want to know just what your experience is, not to beat you over the head with it, just like see where you are, that kindness, that caring. And again, sometimes people will do it and sometimes they won't, but just keep asking questions. Imagine you're like the ask why 5 times type of thing. Like, what are your key priorities? Right? Why do you think they're focused on that? Okay, so why is that their motivation? And you don't have to do it strictly as 5 whys, but basically the idea is just keep them talking. If you keep them talking and you stay open and it's clear, like, you're just there to listen, people, like, I'm one of those people, even though it seems like I never stop talking, I'm on a podcast. I'm one of those people that people just come up and tell me their life story and, like, the most traumatic things that have ever happened to them. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, I have no idea why I just told you that. I'm like, because people just tell me that. there's something about your energy that has to be open. And I don't mean like in a woo-woo sense. I mean just like
Yeah.
you have to show that you're non-judgmental. You have to feel safe. Psychological safety, whether
Mhm.
you're running a team or talking to a client, is the most valuable thing that you can create, because everyone always has a little bit of a guard up in business. They're always
Yeah.
a little bit afraid that people are going to realize they're human and that that makes them not fit for the job.
Rachel, if I'm talking to a customer trying to do a renewal, I'm asking good questions, and I can feel that they're emotionally attached to another idea that's probably going to cancel my contract
Mm-hmm.
with them. Do I try to base them back in logic, or do I try to use questions that draw in that emotion of what you'll lose, like when you said about losing access? Which, if we lose access, as we've been looking at things, your average user says that they're saving more than 60 hours. Like, how will you handle those complaints? Like, I always have a tough time asking that type of question because it does sound like a little fear based.
Yeah, it does.
So, one, is that the right thing to do? Should I stay with emotion, or should I try to bring them back to logic and just say, okay, according to what we've agreed upon in the past, here's what the data is telling us. Is that what's giving us up? Like, I don't know what's your suggestions there.
Dig into the why of why this other thing is important. What do you think it's going to fix? Because a lot of times people don't realize, I call it the invisible implications. And it's like,
Mhm.
look, I understand you got to keep your job, you got to prioritize what they're telling you to prioritize. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out that, like, there are certain things that become harder without this, because the way I explain it, and I even explain this on calls, is like, I've been married 11 years, right? And my husband puts cans, like soda cans, whatever, on top of the recycling bin. He does not put it inside the recycling bin. He leaves it on top. I take this personally. And every time I'm stomping around, like, what is it? It's my job to put it, 3 seconds, whatever. I'm stomping around, and that's what I'm noticing. And then I'm all angry at him. But if I stop to take a second and I'm like, you know what? He drove the kids to school and picked them up and picked the dog up. He went to the grocery store. He did the dishes. Like, and I have a problem, like, opening the damn recycling bin. I mean, let's be honest here about the value, what value I'm really getting and where I'm focusing. Because we all take these things for granted and we forget what it was like before them, right? I would be so screwed without that, without him around. I don't know how to change a light bulb. Are you kidding? Um, because I haven't had to. Like, I'm sure I could, uh, but that's the same with your customers. It's like, I want to make sure that you're not, so frustrated by the can that you're forgetting that you get this and this and this, that you would lose this and this and this and this, right? And that probably is more than the effort of a can. Um, and a lot of times it really is about external pressure, um, but really finding the root cause. You got to make it about them and not about you. What are they scared of? What is their company scared of? And how can you make your product the answer? Because they really don't want to switch. It's a pain in the butt, right? It's a pain in the butt to have to switch, to have to onboard. It sounds all great and sexy. It doesn't sound like that one has bugs and that it'll take 6 months to implement, but it's the reality of a lot of softwares. People would always rather just like stay with the status quo if at all possible. Um, we get shiny object syndrome, but we can be brought back over. Like, even if you say, like, have you thought about the time investment that that's going to take? What are you going to do while you don't have a system up and running? How are you handling that? Is that going to affect your quarterly KPI, like your quarterly goals? Are you still going to be able to meet them? That would concern me. Like, shoot, I'm not going to be able to meet my goals. They're not going to let me blame a software. I don't hit my numbers. That's bad. So it's like, how is this going to affect you personally? People don't consider the domino effect.
Mm. Rachel, I think I'm gonna remember that idea of invisible implications for a long time. I really like that idea, and I think it's one that's we tend to only see the obvious wins and the obvious failures, and we fail to recognize and see the real wins and the real losses that are invisible. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes that we need to get better at seeing. So I love that. Well, Rachel, we're getting near the end of our time here, and there's been a lot of really good nuggets. And we've gotten into some things that I would say absolutely fall into the camp of some pretty serious therapy. So I guess we usually have a couple of questions we like to ask at the end. But do you have any advice for people who might be feeling maybe the way Casey did? They lost a customer, failed at a renewal, failed at a new deal because they didn't recognize these things. And then what would you ask them to do as your homework assignment to overcome it in the future?
Well, first of all, I would diagnose them with a horrible terminal case of being human. Who hasn't lost a customer that way? Who hasn't been focused on themselves and missed something? Literally everyone. You can't tell me there's someone who is 100% focused on other people and does things 100% perfectly all the time. So just drop that, forgive yourself. It's done. Like, dwelling on something that you can no longer impact, it is a waste of your time. And flogging yourself with it doesn't make you better at sales. It is better off to say, like, all right, well, why did that happen? It's okay. Mistakes are okay so long as you learn from them. It's like, all right, this was the time I learned not to trust that they were sold right off the bat. This was the time I learned you still go through all the questions, and you still have to stay interested in them to make sure that we're really solving their problem. And it's a very tough time out there right now economically. It's just, there's a lot of emotion, a lot of turmoil. And during this, I remind myself, like, this is what leveling up feels like. It's horrible. You don't level up when you do a great job and everything's going well and things are going the same. You learn to be more adaptive. You get more superpowers when things are hard, and you gotta, kind of examine, where could I do better? What could I do different? And then just trying things out in tiny experiments, because we also hate change. We hate doing anything different. So I just think of it as like, what is the smallest action I can take to A/B test this, right? That's been very valuable for me. And I make people say that back to me because I will forget the minute I get upset. But really, just looking at it as, this is part of it. What am I learning? Rehearse the conversation. This is what I say next time. Rehearse it in your head. That mental rehearsal really does start to build neural pathways so that you do it that way next time.
So good. It's a good one. Well, Rachel, thank you again so much for joining us today. I guess what should people know if they want to connect with you? You'll look you up on LinkedIn, obviously. Any other things people should know before we let you go today?
LinkedIn, look me up on LinkedIn, but they've been hiding my posts a lot. So yeah, like crazy. I post every day. Everyone's like, where did you go? So not sure what's going on there, but you can always find me on provansuccess.com. I have a weekly newsletter about psychology, leadership, and CS. I also have my podcast, Psychology of Customer Success. And we are opening up the doors again to the CS Leadership Academy very soon. So that will be in mid-October. And we also are helping people who are looking for jobs in CS. So as long as you have experience in CS, you can absolutely contact me about that as well. It's just Rachel at provansuccess.com. And everything's on the website. Or if you just want to geek out about psych and CS, I'm down.
So good. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Rachel. And thanks everybody for joining us again today. And everybody have a great rest of your week. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.